Don't tell anyone, but this scale is a secret. Nah, just kidding. Composers have been using this scale and the chords contained within for over 100 years. I'm talking about the augmented scale. It is a scale of 6 notes and therefore belongs to the category of hexatonic scales. Here is the scale. One way to think of it is the intervallic pattern of minor third, half step, minor third, etc. until you reach the starting note an octave higher. There is a book you should all own. It was first published in 1947. It's by musical theorist Nicholas Slonimsky, called Thesaurus of Scales and Melodic Patterns. In this book, the author breaks down every possible scale. There should be 12 editions of this book, since every scale or example starts on a C. This means there should be a book for C, C sharp, D, etc. You can purchase it via the link in the description below. In this seminal classic, Slonimsky denotes this hexatonic scale mundanely as number 182. It's on page 27. It is among his Ditone progressions, so called because it equally divides the octave into 3 parts. You see how he starts with just a basic C augmented chord, but inserts half-step approaches from below each chord tone. Each half-step approach actually comprises its own augmented chord, an E-flat augmented chord. So another way to think of the augmented scale is 2 augmented chords a half-step apart, one superimposed over the other. Okay, we understand the basics, but now things get increasingly more complicated from here. Let's start extracting chords. There are 3 sets of major and minor chords contained in the C augmented scale: C major, C minor, E major, E minor, G sharp major, and G sharp minor. Right off the bat, some of you may notice that these chords are chromatic mediants of each other. I've talked about chromatic mediants before, but they are chords whose root is a major third apart and share a common chord tone. One trick with these chords is to layer 2 sets of 3-note triads so you have all 6 notes sounding simultaneously. An example would be a G sharp minor chord over a C major. Or vice versa. Or voice it like this. Or arpeggiate it like this. I could probably stop the video here and let you go to the piano and figure out all the possible combinations. And sorry to all you non-piano players out there, but this one really needs to be played at a piano to get the full effect. We'll see why in a minute. It has to do with orchestration. Now, let's go a little further and say that we take this 6-note scale and insert more notes to fill it in, to make it more scalar. If we add 3 more notes, one here, here, and here, we would effectively create a nonatonic scale, or a 9-note scale. You could also insert these notes here, here, and here to create a different type of nonatonic scale. Yet again, you could stop the video now, walk away, and go experiment with all these great sounds, but what would be the fun in that? Let's see how some of our favorite composers have used this scale in context. For example, can anyone name this film score? Any guesses? It's not from a film, although it sounds like it. No, it's the opening of a 3-act opera called Die Gezeigneiten by German composer Franz Schäker. In this example, the opening riff is based on the D augmented scale, where he has a D major and B flat minor chord sounding simultaneously. Transposed to the first scale I pointed out, the C augmented scale, it would be the same as C major and G sharp minor sounding simultaneously. You can find this Schäker score on IMSLP, and if you have a chance to check it out, the orchestration is exquisite, especially the first violins. You'll see what I mean when you download it, and take a look. There's a recording of it on YouTube. Make sure to check with copyright laws in your country before downloading. There is another piece of music from around this time period that uses the augmented scale, and I know you've all heard this piece before. Modern film composers certainly know this piece. It is, of course, Neptune from Gustav Holst's The Planets. This movement is the last of the suite and is supposed to emulate the sound of traveling through space, or something like that. It's supposed to sound mysterious. The opening of this movement is largely a shifting between E minor and G sharp minor chords until there is just a blending of the 2 chords together. Because the sonorities and harmony of this piece are so closely associated with the mystical, this unique tonality has been ingrained in our minds as synonymous with the supernatural, or mysterious, or unknown. Okay, moving on. There is a clarinet passage in Bartók's Miraculous Mandarin that uses the augmented scale in a very clever way. Check it out. It is for two clarinets in A, so while the score has a C, the clarinet is playing an A as its starting pitch, and the pattern is A, up a fifth to E, up a half, up a fifth, etc. It doesn't make it back to the starting pitch, but it does manage to sound out all notes of an A augmented scale. Now let's move ahead in time and look at how modern film composers have adapted this scale into their scores. No film composer has embraced this sound more than John Williams. Remember that Bartók clarinet lick? Well, take a look at the music for this scene. It's the ending of Uncovering the Ark from Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's the part where Sala is raised out of the pit and the rope falls, right before Belloc says, "Hello, hello!" Williams stacks these minor chords using the same principle. The Bartók example was a melodic manipulation of the hexatonic scale. This Williams example is a manipulation of the harmony. The low brass play a G minor chord, then muted trumpets, electric piano, and vibraphone outline another minor chord whose top note is a half step away from the root of the next minor chord. Finally, the winds finish out the starting chord 2 octaves above. That sounds confusing, I know. Think of it like this. You start with a G minor chord, then stack an E flat minor chord on top, which is a half step up from the top note of a G minor chord. Then you go up again another half step from the top note of the E flat minor chord to B minor, then again from the top note of the B minor chord F sharp to G minor, back to the starting note. The whole thing sounds like this. The next 3 examples are all closely related, not only in harmony derived from the augmented scale, but also through orchestral texture. The first is from The Phantom Menace. At Qui-Gon's funeral, Sam Jackson asks, "But which was destroyed, master or apprentice?" Listen to the harmony.
But which was destroyed, the master or the apprentice?
He has steady chords of A minor over C sharp major in winds and brass. Strings, harp, and piano have arpeggiated figures. You see, this is why it is so important to play these types of things on the piano, so you can see what this music feels like under your fingers, to help you internalize. It also shows you the type of filigree that Williams conjures up for certain instruments, which, in turn, is what he uses to manipulate your emotions through thoughtful composition. Let's look at another example, this time from Harry Potter. This one is a bit more complex because while the basic element is there, A minor over C sharp major, Williams dresses up the harmony with the nonatonic scale by adding B's and D's to create a massive, dense, and delicious sound. The last Williams example is from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the part where Walter Donovan dips the Grail into the font.
Certainly is the cup of the King of Kings. Eternal life.
Again, Williams uses the hexatonic scale as a springboard. He doesn't limit himself compositionally. The scaling chords and instruments are just tools. It would be like handing a hammer to someone and they build a house with nothing but bathrooms in it. Pretty boring and useless. So it is with music. You need to know how and when to vary all these techniques. The last example is from Total Recall, Forum 4, the Johnny Cab.
Got you bugged. They'll be busting down your door in about 3 minutes unless you do exactly what I say. Don't bother searching the bugs in your skull.
As Arnold Schwarzenegger's Quaid character turns on a monitor, strings play a moving, then sustaining figure. The effect is like playing eighth notes on the piano while holding down the sustain pedal. The resultant chord is C sharp minor over F major, but notice how the lowest note is C, so it is an F major chord in second inversion. As Quaid looks up to a mirror, the brass sound out quickly with the same chord, but only the root of the C sharp minor chord is sounding.